Good morning. Good morning. God help me. I'm speaking about how to be wise. How to be a wise educator. And the quick answer is that you become wise slowly. And as you become wise, you're not even aware that it's happening. Mark Van Doren writes in his book, Liberal Education, is a prize-winning poet, Pulitzer Prize-winning poet from Columbia University in the 1940s or 50s. He says, I'm trying to be educated. I'm trying to be educated. The wisdom is something that proceeds before you. Becoming educated is something that never stops. And the best educated person is always somebody besides yourself. It's always someone else. The wise educator is also a happy educator. The happy educator is someone who has learned to see and learned to see the true, the good, and the beautiful. And when you do that, you start to become happy. And if you do this repeatedly over time, you slowly become wise. Put another way, the wise educator is not merely knowledgeable, but perceptive, contemplative, intuitive. The wise educator knows his times, but he lives in an important sense outside of time. He's not time's fool. He's not merely a man of the age. He's become a man of the ages. In fact, we can say that the wise teacher is also a lover, because you probably know the word philosopher means to become a lover of sophos, which is the Greek word for wise, Sophia being the noun, wisdom. And we want all to be lovers of wisdom. You have to love it before it will actually characterize you. Love leads everything. St. Paul teaches us this. But even people before the Christian tradition understood that love must lead. The wise teacher will also remove anything that blocks his way to the beloved. He will remove every hindrance, every impediment. Which brought to mind this sonnet from Shakespeare, who writes, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love alters not when it alteration finds, nor bends to remove with the remover. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It's the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, though its height be taken. Love's not time's full, though rosy lips and cheeks within its bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not, but bears it out. Love alters not in its brief hours and week, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error upon me proved, that no man ever loved, nor I never writ, nor no man ever loved." So says Shakespeare. Love is not time's fool. Love does not admit impediments. And that word impediment is instructive because it's a Latin word. And the Roman soldier knew what an impediment was, because it was anything that would keep him from marching. That big backpack that he would have to wear, that might be 50 pounds or more, with weapons and other kinds of supplies, was called an impedimentum. See, pes pedis in Latin means foot. So anything that's an impediment keeps you from progressing, from walking. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. And we have impediments to our own wisdom. Impediments in education that keep us from growing and recovering what we might call a Christian classical education. What we're starting to call now simply the education of the church. What the church did over centuries was learn how, slowly, to raise up our sons and daughters. We sometimes call this classical education. We might call it liberal arts education. But do you know what we called it before 1900?
School.
We called it education. The reason we have to use adjectives now, like classic or classical or traditional, is because something new came along. progressive revolution of education. Prior to that, it was called education, and we knew what those words meant. One way to recover education is simply to recover our vocabulary. And so I've written a lot about this because we don't know what the words mean. When I was here last year, I talked about the liberal arts, and I chided all of us because we use the word liberal arts, and we think we know what they mean. We think we know what it refers to. Some of us went to a liberal arts college. We think we did a liberal arts major, but we don't know what the liberal arts even are. We can't name them. Can you name them? I think I did a liberal arts major. Well, I studied history and classics. Certainly those are liberal arts, but it turns out they're not. Then what are they? And you're going to speak to professors about this, and they'll say, oh, well, certainly literature, history, political science, certainly philosophy is a liberal art, because I'm a professor in a liberal arts program. But those aren't any of the liberal arts. And even if we can name them, we don't know why they're called arts. Why aren't they called sciences? Why don't we just call them subjects? We've lost the meanings. We've forgotten. And we've almost forgotten that we've forgotten. And of course, we don't know why these arts are called liberal. There's nothing to do with the liberal conservative political spectrum that we're experiencing today. And now, if you're curious, don't you want to know what the liberal arts were? Yes. There were 7 of them. The artes, septem artes liberalis, 7 liberal arts, and they were divided into 3 categories: the verbal arts and the mathematical arts, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, mastering word, and then arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, mastering number, learning how to understand the world in terms of naming the world and measuring the world. Much more to say about that, but if we're going to grow wise, we have to know these arts that make us human. The wise educator, the lover of wisdom, is not time's fool. He reads out of time. He reads the old books. He's interested in tradition, because tradition is something good that's been passed down to us. It's what Chesterton called the democracy of the dead. Simply because someone has passed from this earthly life doesn't mean we ought not to hear that person's voice. Some of the greatest wisdom comes to us from the past. So he reads the old books, the ones that are ever fresh, ever new. And that's why we also call them great, the great books. And the wise educator hasn't just read books. Books have read him. The wise educator has not grown wise in spurts and fits, but has grown slowly, like a tree, almost imperceptibly. And when the fruit of that tree is fully ripe, it appears quietly, and it fills the branches without the tree even knowing. There's a kind of natural humility that comes as people grow in wisdom. The wise teacher, we can use some other vocabulary words worth recovering, is prudent. And I'll also use a word that we rarely ever use. You may have never heard it before. Prudent and sophic. Sophic from sophos, from Sophia. No teacher becomes wise after 2 years of teaching or 4 years of college, though these can be very good starts, and there are in fact some who are wise beyond their young years. The wise teacher has become so with experience and therefore time, but also the wise use of time. Time spent reading, which is to live other lives before one dies. Reading literature, history, the liberal arts, the great books, is a multiplier of life. Archimedes said, give me a lever long enough and a place to stand, and I'll move the earth. Well, growing in wisdom is a lever. Reading is a lever that multiplies your life many, many times over. It's time spent in conversation with colleagues that leads to wisdom, which includes students. Time spent stargazing, even when life demands much. I say stargazing because not just the stars should we gaze at, those stars that burn like flames in the sky, which really they are kind of like, well, they are flames in the sky. But any burning wonder that's worthy of attention. Augustine is a star. Aquinas is a star. Jonathan Edwards is a star. Shakespeare and Whitman are stars. Tolkien and Lewis are twin stars worth gazing at. The wise teacher is a prudent teacher that has learned how to see what is really real, and who helps his students realize. To realize is to understand what is actually true. It's right there in the etymology of the word. Realize what is real, what is true, what is good, what is beautiful, what is holy. The prudent teacher must be busy because he's a teacher. Maybe he's too busy, like King David was busy. But King David, the busy executive that he was the king of Judah. What did he have to do during the day? A lot. But what did David want to do more than anything else? He found time to be a poet. And so many of the Psalms we have are penned by a king, a busy executive. And in Psalm 27, he writes that there's one thing that I want, one thing I seek, that I might dwell in the temple of the Lord and gaze upon his beauty every day, all the days of my life. This was the disposition and heart of a very busy executive. The Latin word for practical wisdom is prudentia. Prudentia, and the Greek word is phronesis. Why do I mention these words? Because we need to recover our vocabulary. We don't even know what prudent means. We don't know what it means to be prudent anymore. And yet, 100 years ago, everybody would have understood. Prudentia is one of the 4 cardinal virtues, along with justice, temperance, and courage. The wise teacher is prudent without being prude. He is providential in the sense that he can see things before they happen. So good is he at reading the circumstances that surround him, which is to say, the circumstances that's what surrounds him. Providence is a word that means to see before, right? Providencia, you can see video in there, videre, providere. It's interesting that prudencia is actually a contraction of providencia. It's a shorter way of saying the same thing. It's about seeing. This ability to see, to discern, we call practical wisdom. If we don't truly see what is real, how will we conduct ourselves in the world? How will we teach? If prudence is the art and virtue of seeing and discerning the real, well, then who will teach me to see? Who will teach me to see the real? Who will take me before the true, the good, and the beautiful, and the holy, and say, behold? Who will instruct me by fixing my gaze and holding my gaze until eventually I become what I behold? This is it not the call of Jesus Christ in Luke chapter 6, when he says, when a student has been fully trained, he will be like his teacher. But in the preceding verse, he says, if a blind man leads a blind man, won't they both fall into a pit? You see, a good teacher is somebody who can see, somebody who is not blind, somebody who has been there before and seen something good, something true, something beautiful. And a good teacher knows that he can't just give a report. He can't just give a mere narration of his own experience. Instead, the good teacher says, follow me, and I will show you something. You need to see it with your own eyes, because you have to ask yourself for it to be given. You must knock on the door yourself for it to be open. And a good teacher takes you to the door, takes you to that thing. We use this verb of perception or sight often to describe metaphorically what education is. So we say things like this: I see what you see. Now I see it. Now I see it. And so there's a sense in which prudence is so important to teaching, because it's learning to see, to open our eyes. And sometimes someone must lead us, take us there. And that's what a good teacher does. A good teacher can't see for his students. A good teacher takes the eyes of the students before what he has already seen himself. So Prudence is about sight, and it's not just physical sight, but it's insight, the perception of what is real. If we become prudent, then we can teach. If we become prudent, we will know what is what, who is who, and what to do. And to use Christ's language again, if we learn to take the plank out of our own eye, we will see clearly to take the speck out of our own students' eyes. Only the prudent teacher can teach justly, giving each student what is his or her due. Only after perceiving the reality of the subject that he teaches, the class dynamics, talents, the strengths, and the weakness of each student, the time that he has available to teach, and many other factors, only then can he bring about justice in the classroom, teaching the right art at the right time, in the right manner, to the right students. Prudence, after seeing the real, will know what to do, when, and how. So how do we get prudence? The short answer again is that it's a long life lived well, and it's the result of an education. And education is always slow. It comes by a life with reading, study, and conversation with mentors, coaches, colleagues, and friends. This is John Newman. He wrote a book in the mid-1900s, mid-1800s, 19th century, about education called The Idea of the University. And in one very piquant passage, he describes what an education is. And you'll see as you read this quotation from Newman, how prudence is shot through the whole thing. The language he uses reminds us that we need to recover our vocabulary, because he speaks about what education is in eloquent, elevated terms that are challenging for us now, some almost 200 years later, to access. But here's what he says. He's talking about well-educated mind. And the language he uses to describe it is the perfection of an intellect. But by perfection, he doesn't mean flawless. He means fully developed. He means a mature mind. He's describing a well-educated human being. And he says, this is what it is. It's beautiful, but it's hard for us to access. He says, the perfection of the intellect, which is the result of education. The mature mind, which has been educated. And its beau or beautiful ideal. He's speaking about something that we never fully reach, but is before us as an ideal, even as it recedes before us. He says this perfection of the intellect, which is to be imparted in their respective measures, is this. It's the clear, calm, accurate vision and comprehension of all things. Well, that's quite a goal, isn't it? I simply want to comprehend everything. I want it to be clear and calm. I want it to be accurate. That is wisdom. How will I get that? Slowly. And he says, we can only get it as far as the fine mind can embrace that. In other words, we have our limits, don't we? We won't know as God knows, but we can know. And he says, this knowledge is also appropriately ordered. All these things that we're seeking to comprehend have their place. And we begin to understand their place in a kind of harmonious whole. This is wisdom. It's seeing what is real. And as everything has its place, we learn that these various things have their own characteristics. He says this fully educated mind is almost prophetic. Why is it prophetic? Because it studied history. And history keeps repeating itself, at least human nature does. And so someone who's studied history and is steeped in history can almost see what's going to happen next in a given circumstance. He sees what is real about human nature and how humans behave. And so history makes us prophetic. But it's almost heart-searching. Why? Because it studied the great literature as well. It studied humanity. It knows the human heart and soul. Would you like to be like that? Would you like teacher like that? Would you like your children to be like that? Heart-searching, prophetic, almost able to see what's going to happen next. It studied human nature. It has almost supernatural charity. That's love. Because reading great books in the Christian and classical tradition frees us from littleness and prejudice and broadens our own understanding because we have lived many lives through what we have read. We have come to know thoughts that we would never come to on our own time and in our own experience. And so it's freed from littleness and prejudice, and it almost has the repose of faith because nothing can startle it because it's seen what goes around and what comes around. It's read the book of Ecclesiastes many times over in the great literature and in history and in scripture and in poetry. It almost has the beauty and harmony of heavenly contemplation. So intimate is it with the eternal order of things and the music of the spheres. This is beautiful, elevated language. And there are phrases here that were really well known that we don't know and understand today, like the music of the spheres. What is the music of the spheres? Well, this is a phrase that describes the fact that as the planets move and the stars move, there must be a celestial harmony. And if there is a celestial harmony, there is cosmic harmony. And if there's a cosmic harmony, I should be in harmony with it. I should be conformed to it. I too should be a harmony. There was a musica mundana, the music of the world, the music of the spheres. It wasn't just acoustic music, it was music, anything that was beautiful that moved, in patterns that were lovely and in harmony. There was also a music instrumentalis, which means acoustical music. But there was also a musica humana, a human music. We are to be songs. We are to be harmonies. This tradition, see its richness, see its depth. We have to recover it, and it will take a while. So take a deep breath, and just be glad you're in the tradition now, and that you're in the river, and that you're swimming in it. Be patient with yourself. It will take the rest of your life, and wisdom will always recede before you. And you will grow wise, but it will be others who tell you that you're wise, not you telling yourself. That's funny. Music of the spheres. Harmony of heavenly contemplation. Even that word contemplation, let's just look at that for a moment. David says, where does he want to be all the days of his life? In the temple. Contemplation. Con, cum, templum. A temple is a set apart, sacred space and time where you can actually perceive deeply something true, good, and beautiful. Contemplation. Get in your temple. Just the etymology of that word begins to illuminate its meaning, does it not? But we don't see it. We don't hear it. We don't know these words. We don't know what they refer to. We don't know the liberal arts, and we don't know contemplation, and we don't know prudence. But we're recovering because it's our tradition, and it has been handed down to us, and it belongs to you because your brothers and sisters cultivated this tradition and have passed it down to you. We almost lost the ability to receive it, but we are receiving it again. We're recovering. So we want to get this prudence. Acquiring prudence activates and enables other great virtues as well, like temperance, like justice, like courage. The prudent teacher will know how to cultivate these things because he sees what is real. But there's also another version of wisdom that I have to mention before I close. And that's not just prudencia, but it's Sophia. And what Numa here is describing is also Sophia. It's knowing how all things work together, all the parts coming together in their whole. We need to be not just prudent, but we need to be sophic. There were other words, prudencia, and the Greek word is phronesis. In Greek, there was phronesis, that was practical wisdom. But then there was Sophia, and the Latin translated Sophia as sapiencia, sapience. And it comes from a verb, sapor, which means to taste. It means to actually come to know things in such a deep way that we can compare it not just to the sense of sight, but to as ingesting it into our very selves. Sapiens is also sophos. And as we've already seen from Carol's presentation, Christ is the power and the Sophia of God. He is the one who knows all things because he created all things. He is the one who put all of those things into harmony. He is the one who sustains the harmony. He is the one who can bring harmony to our own souls and harmony to our families and our churches and our classes and our schools. He is the power and wisdom of God. He fulfills all the longing of the Greek philosophers who wrote about Phronesis and who wrote about Sophia. When he came, he was the Logos made flesh. He is the one who brings harmony to all, personally and society. And our schools need to recover a life of wisdom and become schools of wisdom. As we do so, we will be blessed and we will be the cause of blessing. The souls of our students are yearning to be united to the one who brings harmony, the one who is the author of all that is true, good, and beautiful. Christos Hologos, Christ the Word, who has come and incarnated himself and revealed himself to us that we might walk in his footsteps and so become wise. And so he's the fulfillment of all of the Greek philosophy. He's the fulfillment of the Old Testament law from the Hebrews, who said, as Paul did, that the law was a tutor leading them to Christ. But the early Greeks who became Christians, who were philosophers, said, our philosophy has been a tutor that has led us to Christ, who is the absolute truth. He is what we were longing for. He is Sophia. He is Phronesis. He is the wisdom and power of God. Your students have souls, and so they long to be united to the creator of their souls. They long to be in love with him. They want to be in union with the creator and the savior, the redeemer of all, Christ, the wisdom and power of God. Let us not put hindrances before these students. Let us remove every hindrance, every impediment that would keep them from being united to this wisdom. Let us slowly grow wise ourselves in humility. Let us enter into this tradition with patience. And let us not, to the marriage of true minds,